This is the Batflip Podcast. Now here's your host, Damien, David, and Matt.
Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Batflip Podcast. I'm used to saying season preview edition, but this is not a season preview edition. This is our live Monday night show. So I'm Matt here today. I'm joined by David. Damien is out. We wish him the best. He's been dealing with some stuff. So, but we ready to talk about some baseball because guess what? This week is opening day for everybody except the Cubs and Dodgers, and I don't think David wants to remember the Cubs opening day. So
no baseball's actually occurred yet. It's all fresh. It's starting fresh on Thursday.
So yeah, we're gonna talk about opening day on Thursday. We're gonna talk a little bit about the Japan series last week, which was a pretty cool thing. Some news and notes around the league that have happened over the last week. This is also extension season. A lot of guys in ARB and pre-free agency signed their contract extensions right before the season begins. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit. A few injury updates coming into the season, guys getting put on the IL, and a couple prospects that are looking like they might be big leaguers here at the beginning of the season. But first, David, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to baseball that matters, that isn't like 5 a.m. I have to alter my sleep schedule to get to. But it was cool. I mean, I enjoyed the games for what they were, but I do really wish they didn't count because it felt a lot more disappointing than otherwise. Like it felt like a really cool, it's very cool that Japan gets, a hold of this, but it's really going to throw off the opening for the Cubs, opening for the Dodgers too, probably. They're going to have jet lag. They're just getting back into playing games, I think today. In terms of like the starters. So, they only have like a week now to kind of get back in the rhythm, and then they'll have, a very tough month ahead. So it's a very difficult thing to be a fan of the team that starts this. But as a pure baseball fan, man, that was cool. So I loved it. I'm excited to talk about it a little bit. How you doing this week?
I've been pretty good. Just like I say, excited that opening day is coming. I've been watching all kinds of March Madness too, so that's been excellent. Thursday is going to be one of the best sports days on the calendar. You got, Sweet 16 games. You got a Major League Baseball opening day. What else could you ask for? So I'm excited for that.
Before we go, we'll do the courtesy. I'll give you the courtesy. When is Auburn playing? How you feeling?
Auburn is playing Friday night at 9 p.m. And they're playing in Atlanta, so it's actually going to be like 10 p.m. where they're at. It's gonna be late night, but I'm excited. They're playing Michigan. I feel pretty good about it. I liked how Auburn played on Saturday. I did not like how they played on Thursday, but they got the easy opponent since they got the 1 seed. And I'm not going to ask you about Clemson. I'm sorry.
I picked against them in the bracket.
Right.
I picked McNeese. I figured, I'm not gonna be mad twice and let the bracket get busted on it. But
I do want to say that with the way my basketball picks have gone this year, I might need to be on a basketball podcast instead of on a baseball podcast because I'm like in the top 10,000 in all the brackets. So
all the favorites won this year though. So all you had to do is pick the favorites.
There you go. That's what I usually do. But the few upsets I did pick were the ones that came true. So I was pretty excited about that. But it's all going to collapse this week. So, but yeah, I guess we can talk a little bit more here about the Japan series. They started off on I believe it was Tuesday morning our time, so I guess it was Tuesday evening in Japan. And they had the first game. The Dodgers won 4-1. Yoshinobu Yamamoto pitched a really nice game. 5 innings, 1 earned run. You look pretty good. Ben Brown got hit with the loss there. Sorry, David.
I mean, we'll get into it. I feel like that's not really Ben Brown's fault, but
No, not really. But yeah, Shota Imanaga came in. He didn't give up a hit, but he walked a bunch of guys. He did not look particularly sharp. Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things where, as you mentioned, it's weird. You're playing a game really early. You're not fully ready, even though they did start spring training a couple days early. They're not fully ready for it, and I mean, it shows. The Cubs walked 8 Dodgers in the game, and it was a tough way to start. And then game 2, we had a little bit of controversy in game 2. So Shohei Ohtani got his home run in Japan, but it was a ball that was going to hit off the wall, except that a fan reached out and grabbed it. But it was kind of hard to tell based on the camera angles. There wasn't a great camera angle with it, and MLB was definitely going to side with Shohei Ohtani if they didn't absolutely have to overturn it, and they wanted the storyline of Ohtani hitting the home run in Japan. So, but he got his home run. Tommy Edman hit a home run. Kike Hernandez hit a home run. We don't know how the Dodgers do this.
I do, but they're both, those are the guys that I was worried about, right? Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts are down. I was like, man, I'd rather see Edman and Hernandez down.
Yeah, but Justin Steele was the pitcher for the Cubs. He got hit for 5 runs, but a couple homers in there. Roki did not look particularly good. This was Roki Sasaki's debut, walking tons of guys. He had no command. The Cubs bailed him out by swinging at pitches that were well out of the zone. And but yeah, I mean, David, I know these games were a little bit disappointing for you as a Cubs fan. They lost both of them. But what were your overall thoughts on just like the series in general? The attendance for these games was over 42,000, which is kind of awesome. Yeah. Obviously, we kind of expected that, but it's still awesome. So what was your overall thoughts on this event in general?
I love it. But again, I almost wish this was the All-Star game. I think this could be a really good way to segue the trip to Japan and the Japanese fans into be, pushing your stars. I think this would be better served as an all-star event where you send the best of Major League Baseball over and you let them play an exhibition game against the Japanese players. And then you have a game where like Shohei and, Imanaga, Seiya and all them, they move over to the Japanese team and you bring, a few extra guys who get into play and you have a couple of games and you play like for a week. It's kind of a nice break, maybe an off season type of thing. But I just don't love that this is kind of, it's a regular season game and both of these teams end up with regular season stats in a game like this. It feels like everybody was a little bit rusty across the board. I mean, you mentioned that's right. You mentioned that Roki Sasaki looked a little bit rusty. I think he's the first point to make here is that he made his Major League pitching debut. His stuff was nasty, but he was struggling with the command for sure. The issue for him or for the Cubs was that he struggled against the best pitch hitters in the Cubs lineup, and then the bottom of the lineup really wasn't able to provide the insurance, and the Cubs were missing Nico Hoerner, and that's a spot where they had, I think, bases loaded, we're down a run or something, and they really could have blown it open with a little bit of contact. I think Michael Busch struck out, and it's if Nico Hoerner comes up there, I think there's a shot that he makes that contact and is able to drive in a run or two and kind of get things rolling. The other guy I was really excited about when he got in, you mentioned it, was Ben Brown. He struck out Ohtani on 3 pitches. The stuff was there for Ben Brown. He did walk some guys. I felt like the umps were really not good in this game, in this series, really. I not just from a Cubs perspective. They missed the Ohtani call. They missed a lot of the tight strikes, the close stuff. And I left that. And we go back to spring training and they have the challenge system. And I'm like, man, this can't come soon enough. Like that's what the biggest feeling I got from this was, as soon as we can bail out those like close pitches and learn exactly what those are with this challenge system, we're going to, I think, improve the product of baseball over the long haul, because the amount of the Shota Imanaga was getting like squeezed so hard. I just, a couple of pitches where and then Justin Steele struck out It was either Hernandez or Edman, and I think it was Hernandez. Struck him out, curveball on the outside corner. He was out, and they called it a ball. And it's like we're challenged. Like the Cubs are challenging that in a year's time, and that's gonna get resolved. And I hate that, and then of course Hernandez, takes advantage of it, and that's what a good hitter does. And Hernandez is a great, good, big game hitter. He obviously is an incredible playoff performer for the Dodgers. Him performing well surprises me zero. Ohtani performing well surprises me zero. Yamamoto was really, really nasty. I do want to throw him in there as well. I thought, he was he was near unhittable. The fact that Amaya hit a RBI double off of him was absolutely shocking to me. That really encourages me for Amaya this season. But 5 minutes on this, I feel like we've hit on it. I do still think, Damian was talking about it earlier today. He was saying, "Oh yeah, I'll trash talk you for the Ohtani home run," and I don't think the Ohtani home run was the difference in the game.
No,
like it was a bad call, and it's a call that they're the influence of the moment in the game is going to have an influence on that call. So I don't like that, but. At this point, it doesn't matter. I figured I was expecting to go 0-2 in this game. And, the fact the Cubs were in both games till the end and it was at least interesting down the stretch was fine. It's just.
Yeah, I do have one more question for you. We talked about Sasaki making his debut. We also had Matt Shaw making his debut.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch all of both games because it was super early in the morning. But he went 1 for 8 in the series. And I thought when I saw him, he looked overmatched. And I think his one hit might have been an infield hit or something too.
Yeah.
So I thought he looked pretty overmatched in his plate appearances. Do you have any concern, or do you think that's just kind of going over to Japan early beginning of the season? Because he looked, it wasn't just, he looked really bad, honestly. I mean, but.
First the issue, of course, for Shaw is that a rookie coming over and getting Yamamoto's splitter and getting Roki Sasaki's splitter. And then getting the Dodgers bullpen, he wasn't going to be in any favorable matchups. He made some good contact. He hit a line drive up the middle in his first at bat off of Yamamoto, and it should have been a base hit. Dodgers were placed well. That's a hit, 50% of the time, probably. It's just unlucky positioning. And then after that, I think they were feeding him the splitter and the off speed stuff. And it was definitely tough. They were not beating him with the fastball though, which I thought was nice, but what was really encouraging for me was Shaw made some really good defensive plays in the second game. He made 2 diving stops and another like backhand and then turn and throw from third base. He looked like a competent MLB third baseman. I have no issue. I have no doubts at all that Shaw's going to be able to hit. But a lot of guys looked bad against Yamamoto and Sasaki and some of those guys in the Dodgers bullpen. Yep. I think Matt Shaw's final at bat in the first game was off Tanner Scott. Everybody looks bad against Tanner Scott. I don't care about that. So he'll get there. I don't have any concerns, but I mean, he was overmatched, but a lot of the Cubs guys were overmatched. They only scored 1 run in the first game. It is what it is.
Yep. One final comment. Jon Berti for MVP.
Yeah, Jon Berti had 3 hits. That was pretty cool. The Cubs have been pretty terrible about signing like veteran players in the past couple of seasons. And they let Mike Tauchman go, who's like the best veteran player they've had in a couple of years. I mean, Eric Hosmer, Trey Mancini, like a bunch of those guys come to mind. Jonathan Villar. Berti coming out having 3 hits. He had an error in that first game, which cost him a run, but I feel pretty good about Jon Berti being that kind of bench guy that can come in. He can spell Shaw at third. He could probably play some short. And then he played second in place of Nico Horner in these 2 games. So love that. Excited for him. Should be a good season. I'm ready for it. And hey, opening day's coming up. The Cubs get another opening day. How about fun?
Yeah, there you go. Part 2. Let's hope this one goes better than the last one. So yeah, I guess we can move on and talk about opening day real quick. Opening day is Thursday. We wanted to highlight a few good pitching matchups between good teams. It's going to be interesting. It's weird now too. Like it feels like there's a lot of matchups that you didn't ever get on opening day. Like you used to have like a lot of divisional matchups, a lot of and now it's different. One of the first one we wanted to highlight is Paul Skeens facing Sandy Alcantara.
Yeah.
Sandy makes his return. I don't think he
Yes.
pitched. He didn't return last year.
Nope.
So and he gets to face Paul Skeens, who the hype machine has gone full off the rails at this point with Paul Skeens, and it deservedly so. But it is going now, and we're gonna see how he can continue to improve this year and grow from his rookie year. Hunter Green versus Logan Webb. That's another good one. It's a couple teams that are interesting here. Need to get off to a good start and see if they're going to be contenders. Justin Steele and Zach Gallen. Another interesting one. The Cubs really need to, kind of bounce back and get the vibes going a little bit. And obviously, it's interesting that Zach Gallen is starting for the Arizona Diamondbacks and not Corbin Burns on opening day. I think that might have something to do with the way that Corbin Burns has pitched against the Cubs on opening day, but
yeah,
probably not.
They beat him twice on opening day.
They have. Cole Reagans and Tanner Bybee, divisional matchup there. Cleveland and Kansas City going to be a tough, part of that divisional race. Both are expected to contend this year. Chris Sale and Michael King. The thing we were robbed of in the playoffs last year because Chris Sale had back spasms, and we would have gotten that matchup in the playoffs, but we didn't. And that's a good one. See if Michael King can, back up his year last year and see if, I think Chris Sale will if he's healthy, but that's always going to be a question with him. Tarik Skubal out there. I'm not sure who he's facing.
Oh, Snell. That's supposed to be Snell.
Right, Blake Snell. Yeah, we had a typo in our notes there. It would be cool if it was Skubal versus Skeens.
Yeah,
that might be the best
they're
thing
not playing him though.
But not yet. Well, hopefully we see it at some point this year. And then Luis Severino, the new Sacramento A's pitcher, will face Logan Gilbert on opening day as well. So some interesting matchups there. David, I guess which one of those is your favorite to watch?
That's the first one I wrote in. I wrote the notes. It's Skeens and Alcantara. I can't wait. Those guys are both gonna be pumping 100. A couple of Cy Young favorites, a couple of guys that, at least in Alcantara's case, might get traded, right? Like, if you're scouting for your team going for it, that'll be a good one to watch. The other one I have my eye on is Cole Reagans and Tanner Bybee. Bybee just got an extension. We're about to talk about it. And then Cole Reagans is my pick for Cy Young in the AL. I feel like the Royals need to get off to a good start, set the tone for opening day. Vinny Pasquantino's banged up already. Not a good way to open things here, but I think their pitching was my favorite aspect of the team right now anyway. And so that's what I'm really excited about, especially when we're talking about like pitching matchups and stuff. We didn't mention it, but like the Orioles and the Blue Jays are playing. That could be also interesting. And then we also have the Yankees and Brewers, a couple of decent matchups between decent teams. But I think we hit the best pitching matchups that you're going to look out for.
Yeah, that's going to be it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see Chris Sale pitch again, and obviously anytime you got Skeens and Alcantara, nobody's really talking about Sandy. I'm interested to see how he performs this year because last time we saw him pitch a full season, it was a Cy Young season, and then he had the season where he got injured, and he wasn't quite as good before the injury. I don't know if he was being affected by it already or anything, but obviously missed last year, so it's going to be interesting to see how he does. And that's another guy to kind of look out for as a trade chip maybe later in the year if the Marlins decide that that's what they want to do. So, but yeah, I guess we could talk a little bit here about some of these extensions we've gotten. The first one, I guess, is Justin Martinez from the Arizona Diamondbacks, a reliever. Throws really, really hard, has really good stuff. Was real impressive last year. He signed a 5-year, $18 million deal that will buy out all of his ARB years. But the kicker of this deal that makes it a pretty good deal, in my opinion, for the Diamondbacks is that he has 2 club options. One is for $7 million, and the other is for $9 million. And those do buy out free agency years. Right. So I think that's a really good deal for the Diamondbacks. Just because of buying out those free agency years, get him for cheap. Right now, relievers at the caliber that they believe Justin Martinez might be able to be are getting $10, $15 million a year. So, and it's club options, so there's not a lot of downside. But David, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love this for Justin Martinez. Obviously, I think a reliever being able to lock in generational wealth, right? $18 million, that's massive. That's a great start. And then obviously the Diamondbacks make out in this deal as well, because if Martinez is able to be a great reliever for that entire time, and obviously Martinez signs this deal, knowing relievers are volatile. I'm volatile. I have to keep it up. But at this point, the pressure is off to earn those deals in arbitration and try and argue for yourself, especially if Martinez isn't going to be getting saves because he may or may not be their closer. They might run a closer by committee. And then this takes that, like, you need saves in order to get a higher arb raise. That takes that out of it. And now Martinez can just do whatever he is asked without, that's no longer a big factor. So I love it from that aspect, because if you're building a bullpen, you need to have your best reliever available when in the highest leverage. That's not always the ninth inning. Diamondbacks now have an additional weapon there where they're not like dedicated to using Justin Martinez as a closer because he won't pitch any other times. So I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin Martinez last year, a 2.48 ERA, and 72 innings, already an elite reliever. And that was only that was truly his first full season in the big leagues. He only pitched 10 innings in 2023. So definitely a good move for the Diamondbacks. But I guess the next one we have is a guy that we already mentioned here a minute ago, and then that is the opening day starter for the Cleveland Guardians, Tanner Bibee. Tanner Bibee signed a 5-year deal worth at least $48 million, and he is going to have a club option on the end of that as well for 2030. So Tanner Bibee, I believe that will buy out 2 years of free agency for him. And that's a really big deal for the Guardians, because that's a team that those last couple of ARB years, sometimes if they're uncertain about money, they trade guys. And of course, we saw with Andres Jimenez, they might just trade him anyways, even if they do sign the extension. But Tanner Bibee's an interesting pitcher. Has had 2 really good seasons in the big leagues already. Was a pretty high-rated prospect coming out, a few years ago. He's been really successful, and the Guardians are always a pitching factory. So, getting him locked up, not a super huge contract, and maybe getting a little bit of cost control at what is buying out a free agent year. Very, very solid for me. But David, what are your thoughts on Bibee?
No, yeah, this is a rock solid deal. Given the price of pitching, he's still going to be underpaid. Guys who are worse than him were getting bigger free agent deals than this. Frankie Montas got 17 million, right? Like a year. This is obviously not that. This is barely even 10 million a year. Buys out a free agent year from Bibee, which I think it's big for the Guardians because it's, as you mentioned, right? They like that flexibility, but he's also going to be still pretty dirt cheap here in the first couple seasons, and these are the couple seasons that you need him to be at his best. As Jose Ramirez is still in his prime and everything. So for the Guardians, I mean, this is really, really solid. But again, this Guardians team needed to spend more in other places in the rotation and did not do that. So while I'm excited to see how Bibee does, right? He's on our list of good opening day matchups. I'm still more concerned about the Guardians as a whole this season. Yeah. I think you also have echoed that in our Guardians season preview episode. It's they're in a spot where, yes, spending this money on Tanner Bibee is a good thing. Yes, getting him locked up through all of his arbitration years and into free agency is good. But if this team doesn't, rebound in that starting rotation, he might be kind of by himself up there. And now he's at least getting paid for it, but that's still not a good spot to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got one more extension here to talk about, and this one might be the biggest out of the 3. It's Alejandro Kirk. I guess it's the biggest money extension out of the 3. But Alejandro Kirk signed 5 years, $58 million. I believe he had 4 years of service time, so that means that probably bought out 3 years of free agency. Now Alejandro Kirk is a very interesting catcher, as he is a guy who was not expected to be a good defensive catcher, but he's turned out to do pretty well, especially on the framing aspect of it. And he's an interesting bat. The last 2 years, he's only been a slightly below average hitter, but before that, he was really good for 3 years at the plate. So if he can kind of regain that form, and the projections expect him to regain that form a little bit. Maybe he's had a little bit of bad luck. There's been some things going on. So in 2025, if he can regain that form, this could be a really good deal for the Blue Jays. But he's been signed a 5-year, $58 million deal. So David, thoughts on Alejandro Kirk?
Yeah, this is a guy that I followed from he was on my dynasty fantasy baseball team back when he was a prospect. Like I've been on this guy for a long time. He's a guy that came up with a really good hit tool back in 2021. Hasn't necessarily been able to keep that steady, but for him the biggest issue was always the defense, like you mentioned, right? And he gives, I think, some there's definite possibilities that growth is possible for like short catchers. But one of the things we're seeing is like the growth, the adaptation of like the really big bodied catchers, the guys who are 6'2", 6'3", like huge dudes. And this is kind of bringing it back to the smaller, the smaller guy. He can go out there at, I think 5'8" and put together a good defensive profile as a catcher, because those guys are typically, think of like a Carlos Ruiz as a smaller guy playing catcher. He's more of a hitter, right? Known as a hitter, as opposed to a fielder like Yadier Molina or somebody like that. So, Kirk obviously getting a nice extension here. I think he can be better offensively than he has been. That's a guy with a good hit tool. He never strikes out, walks a lot. Ultimately, I think another good season like 2022 is definitely in here and possible for a guy like this. So I love a hitter first profile, but it gives me, I think the shorter catchers can definitely, get a chance and improve their defense as they go. And this is kind of an example of that, because thinking Alejandro Kirk's good, and he's, obviously with them clearing out Danny Jansen and some of those other guys that were there with him kind of occupying that space at catcher, I think he's kind of going to get the lion's share of the work this year. And this extension, that kind of the Blue Jays are putting their money where their mouth is effectively when it comes to, Kirk being their starting catcher this year.
Yeah, that's definitely a good move for the Blue Jays, in my opinion. And they let Danny Jansen walk, like you say. So I mean, they need him. I guess we can move on, and we had a few trades that happened this week as well. None of them are enormous trades. They do have some name recognition on both of the two big ones we were going to talk about. But this time of year you have roster crunches where you have to get down to that opening day roster. You got to get down to 26, and there's some guys who are out of options.
Yep.
And you either have to put them through waivers or you end up having to designate them for assignment. And both of these trades definitely had something to do with that. So the first one we're going to talk about is Nolan Jones, who was actually formerly of the team he's with now. He got traded from the Rockies to the Guardians for Tyler Freeman. So, David, what are your thoughts on this trade?
Rockied again, I think is my initial thought, right? What's really funny about this is that Nolan Jones and Tyler Freeman are like best friends from their time with the Guardians from before. So when Nolan Jones was told he was traded, he called Tyler Freeman and was like, "Yo, I got traded." And then Tyler Freeman, they found out that they got traded for each other, and that's pretty hilarious. But Freeman has not been able to perform particularly well at the major league level. Going to be much more serviceable as a bench bat, and I think the Rockies do have some open space on the bench. The Thairo Estrada is dealing with an injury at second base, so he can potentially also take over at second base to start, and they could potentially use Amador there with Freeman on the bench. They might even platoon those guys. So maybe Coors helps unlock a little bit for Tyler Freeman. He really was not able to stand up to that top 100 prospect status he had back in the day with the Guardians. Nolan Jones went 2020 in 2023. He had 20 homers, 20 steals. He had a 137 WRC plus. That's at Coors. And then last year he got hurt early on, wasn't really able to do anything, was kind of a negative WAR player. But I think this is kind of a steal for the Guardians to get this guy back. I feel like they might have given up on him too early. He had a really good season there in Colorado. Obviously, last year was a bit of a lost year, but you get him back, you put him in this lineup with Ramirez, Kwan, with that experience he got over in Colorado. I feel like this guy can maybe turn it around.
Yeah, he got sent to AAA last year. He played 20 games in AAA. Yeah. So that was, it's interesting, but obviously at some point last year, and he did have the injuries. At some point last year, he fell out of favor with the Rockies. I don't know what's going on there. Now this trade for me has a lot to do with that. Like I mentioned, the options. Nolan Jones was out of options, and I don't really know why the Rockies didn't want him on their opening day roster. I mean, you feel like he's at least got the upside. He's 1 year removed from putting up 4 wins above replacement in 106 games.
Mm-hmm.
And putting up, as you mentioned, a 137 WRC plus 20 home runs. He hit 297 with a 389 on base. Like, he had a great 2023. Last year was a disaster, but it's interesting to me that they don't just roll with him, because if you look at their current, their 2025 projected roster, their right fielder is Nick Martini, and their left fielder is Jordan Beck, who I understand wanting to put Jordan Beck up there. He's a prospect.
Yeah.
You want to see what you got in him, and then they've got a couple of other prospects but they're expected to start in AAA. Yanquiel Fernandez and Zach Veen.
Right.
So it's just interesting to me, and Charlie Condon also would potentially be in the outfield, corner outfield part of their roster. But it's interesting to me that they would do this and bring in Tyler Freeman, who, I mean, he's got an option, so they can send him to AAA. But like, why do you need to option Nolan Jones? Just put him on your opening day roster and see what he does. And in 3 weeks, a month, if he's terrible, then I mean, you probably are going to be able to make this kind of trade. I mean, you're just getting a guy who doesn't really have much value at all. So, anyways, I thought it was a weird trade too. I didn't understand it. I mean, the Rockies are going to Rocky. And that's just kind of how it is. But I guess we can move on to our next trade. And we can talk about the Ian Anderson trade for Jose Suarez. Ian Anderson becomes the latest Atlanta Brave to be traded to the Angels. It seems like the Angels are now the former Braves. It's what the A's used to be. Every time the Braves trade, it's with the Angels apparently. So Mike Trout, let's go. But yeah, so the Braves get Jose Suarez and the Angels get Ian Anderson. And I guess I'll let you start here and give your thoughts real quick. And I've definitely got some thoughts on this one. So
I thought Ian Anderson was going to be an ace back in 2020, 2021. I thought this is a guy that with the nasty stuff that the walk rate didn't really concern me that much, but apparently that's just the issue for him. But I mean, in 2020, his numbers in that shortened season were spectacular. 1.95 ERA. I really felt like he was age 22. Like, it really felt like there was nowhere to go for him but up, and he's gone nowhere. Right, he's been toiling in the Braves AAA system. It's disappointing because at one point, in the deadline, when Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo and all those guys were going to get traded, Ian Anderson was one of those guys. I was like, well, trade somebody to the Braves and grab Ian Anderson. Like, it was a kind of a perfect match, but they end up not doing that, and Anderson ends up toiling away. It kind of works out, but like, I've been on him for a long time. I don't have anything on Suarez, but I've been an Anderson fan for a while, and I'm always kind of wondering what the heck happened. And it seems like he just, they never could figure out how to rein in that command, get him going. And it's disappointing, but maybe the Angels can, well, I'm not even going to finish that sentence. They're not going to figure him out.
Yeah. The thing with Ian Anderson that I've, learned from, following him really closely is his stuff appears good, but when you look at the metrics on it, it's not really all that good. His fastball doesn't have much spin on it. And his curveball is not a high spin curveball. It's a gravity based curveball. And he's really easy to pick up on those. The one pitch he really does have that's excellent is that changeup. Like, he's got one of the best changeups in baseball, but the problem is he can't locate it. And, if you're not locating your fastball and all your changeups are diving below the zone, I mean, there's not that much there. So his swing and miss fell off like massively. In 2022, which was his last season in the big leagues before Tommy John surgery, he had a 7.8 strikeout per 9 rate. And for a guy that, walks tons of guys, he does get a lot of ground balls. So that's a good thing. But for somebody who walks a lot of guys, you're going to have to get a lot more swing and miss than that. And, he moves on to, 2024, he comes back and walks are a problem in AAA. And then this spring he looked awful all spring. He had a low ERA, but I mean, his walk rate, he averaged a walk per inning this spring and barely got any strikeouts. He had half as many strikeouts as walks, and you're just not going to survive with that. And I think the Braves knew, like, you've got a contending team. you can't have this guy starting games even for a couple weeks because it's just not going to work out. So they went ahead and swapped him for Jose Suarez, who not great, but he's got some interesting stuff. He could be a swing guy in the bullpen, and I think the Braves like his off speed. That they might be able to figure something out with that. He did have a pretty good 2022, but I'm not. He's going to be a swing guy and like a long relief type here early in the season, and see if they can find something in him. But definitely not. He comes from the left side too, which helps in the bullpen. But definitely not a swap that I think very many people expected. But Ian Anderson's out of options, and I mean the Braves said, well, maybe we can get something out of Suarez, because. I mean, Ian Anderson was not going to be on this roster with the way he's pitched this spring and pitched last year coming off the injury. So hopefully the Angels can figure it out. But as you mentioned, that's usually not the case. Yeah.
We're
But
not.
but yeah, so I guess one more note here on some current big leaguers or guys who have already been in the big leagues. We'll talk about a couple of guys who are about to make the big leagues here at the end, but a few injury notes. Not good. We don't like seeing injuries right before opening day, especially. And this first one is a big one, and that is Gunnar Henderson. He's going to start on the IL. He's had some. I don't know if it's oblique. They call it side, so I don't know if it's oblique or if it's like an intercostal strain, or I don't know what it is, but
it was intercostal strain.
Intercostal strain.
Yeah.
Okay. So that shouldn't keep him out a super long time, but this is a competitive division.
Yeah.
And just missing a week or two could end up being a difference at the end of the season. So that's not good. Alexis Diaz missing the beginning of the season. Zach Geloff, Shane McClanahan. That was a scary injury that he had where he looked down at his arm and was not. Yeah, that looked bad. And then apparently it's some nerve issue in his triceps, which is way better than the elbow injury everyone was kind of fearing when it happened. So, but he's going to start on the IL, but he shouldn't miss a ton of time. Ranger Suarez starting on the IL. Drew Thorpe also starting on the IL. So
Drew Thorpe blew out his elbow.
Thorpe blew out his elbow. Tommy John. So that's very unfortunate. But David, do you have any thoughts on these other than obviously Gunners? We know that's a big deal, and McClanahan as well. But these other ones, any thoughts on any of those?
McClanahan was set to make the opening day start for the Rays. I mean, that was his tune-up game before Thursday. So the Rays are going to Ryan Pepio, which not great. Pepio's okay, but McClanahan was, I think, maybe the biggest name that the Rays were going to be able to deploy in that rotation this year. That's I think a big one. But again, the news that it was the tricep, that it was the nerve, very refreshing to finally get one of those that looks like it's his arm's gone. And that's McClanahan's, I think, off of Tommy John, or at the very least another like an internal brace. Like he was off of a long recovery, so it's really good that he doesn't have another one in store. I do think that Alexis Diaz is kind of a big one because a hamstring for a closer is not going to be easy to ramp up from. Saves in Cincinnati are suddenly going to be an interesting spot. I don't know who's going to take over the closer's role over there, because I think the best candidate got traded to the Yankees for Jose Trevino. So it's Cruz, right? So maybe Emilio Pagan takes over saves. I don't know. Like the Reds are in a weird spot here. Yeah. Where, I'm not even sure. I'm looking at what Fangraphs has. Yeah, they're saying Pagan, maybe Taylor Rogers.
Taylor Rogers would make sense. He's done it before.
Maybe Scott Barlow.
Yeah, I'm not sure. David Robertson.
Yeah, they might need to call him
still
up.
Out there. David Robertson's still out there wandering in the abyss. But yeah, I'm with you. Like the Reds, that's tough. I mean, for a team that's already kind of thin in the pitching, that's going to be a tough start for them. Yeah. One other injury to mention, another NL Central team. Adam, thanks for reminding us in the chat because we missed it. Jared Jones.
Oh yeah. Is it bad, or is it? Do we ever hear whether?
I don't think we've heard yet. So Jared Jones had right elbow discomfort, and the thought was, and he was getting a second opinion already. So, and that's the last I think anybody heard. Okay. So typically when someone gets a second opinion, it's
they didn't like the first opinion.
They didn't like the first opinion,
Yeah.
so that's not a good sign at all. Jared Jones obviously had a breakout year last year. Looked like he was not going to be the ace on that staff because Paul Skeens is there, but looked like a guy who could be an ace.
Right.
And that's very unfortunate. He was also having a really good spring. Had a 2.25 ERA in his 12 innings. So you really don't like seeing Jared Jones go down, and that's going to hurt that Pirates team. That, as we've talked about a lot, a team had a good three-headed monster in that rotation that could have carried them somewhere this year, but they have no depth, and they're not going to be able to win with their offense. So,
I will say, you say they have no depth. They have 3 really good starting pitching prospects sitting in AAA, and they called up Carmen. Oh gosh, I can't even say it. Carmen Mlodzinski. No, I'm not even gonna try. Mlodzinski. Yeah, he's a former first-round pick, but like you're sitting on Bubba Chandler, who can also throw 100. You're sitting on Holderman. It's not Holderman. Harrington, Thomas Harrington, and you're sitting on Braxton Ashcraft. All 3 of those guys could slot into the major league rotation right now. I would feel great about all of those guys taking over Jared Jones' starts. And I think the Pirates are playing the service time game.
Yeah,
they're trying to keep those guys down. They don't need them yet. This year's kind of already looking like kind of a lost, washed year.
Yeah,
come on, man! Like this is where back in our Pirates prediction episode, I was very animatedly angry that this team did not fire it up and start spending some money and getting offensive players. And this is why, like yes, you could have an injury to Jared Jones, but that doesn't need to derail your season. But it kind of looks like it will if you're going to start this Mlodzinski guy. That's
yeah. No, I'm not sure how to say it. But yeah, it's tough. And I mean, like the one other thing, unless they're playing the service time manipulation, which they very well might be, they've got Bailey Falter in their rotation. Yeah. I mean, if those prospects were truly ready, or they weren't going to play the service time, one of those would already be up for Bailey Falter because he's not very good. So we'll see. The Pirates, it's not a good start for them here in 2025. But I guess we can go from talking about a team that should be calling up their prospects to a couple teams that are calling up their prospects. Christian Campbell made the Red Sox. We talked about him in our season preview. We both really like Christian Campbell. He's going to slot in, I guess, at second base. David, what's your thoughts on Christian Campbell being there opening day?
To say what I'm going to end up repeating myself because, y'all are going to see, I think our Red Sox episode hasn't come out yet. Y'all are going to see it. We love the Red Sox, big fans. Sorry, Adam. But the Christian Campbell had a 180 WRC plus in the minor leagues last year as a 22-year-old playing like second base, shortstop, and the outfield. And if you think of anybody else who played for the Red Sox who had, hit right-handed and played second base and shortstop and the outfield, I don't know, some guy probably, right? Not definitely first time, maybe first ballot Hall of Famer type guy. I'm not saying Christian Campbell's Mookie Betts, but that's the comp that keeps coming into my mind. He hits like it, and we'll see. I think him making the team is really good for the Red Sox. That is going to take care of a couple of the little holes in their roster. He's going to start probably play second base. That's probably where he's going to play.
I think so. Yeah. Cause they had slotted David Hamilton there. Now the interesting thing about him playing second base is that means that Devers, Bregman, that whole issue that's been going on all spring with Devers saying, I'm a third baseman, I want to play third. That seems to be like that. It might come up now. Cause it looked for a little while like Bregman might play second and Devers would play third and everyone would be happy. But now it's looking like for sure that Devers will probably be DHing at the beginning of the year, especially with Yoshida out. They don't really have any other, they're getting the best bats in the lineup. Devers probably has to DH. So that's going to be interesting to kind of follow as the season goes on here. But yeah, Christian Campbell, it's going to be really very interesting to see how he performs. He's one of those guys, him and Roman Anthony both. If the Red Sox are going to go where David and I think they're going to go this year, then those two guys have to come up and immediately be impact players. And if they are at the level we think they can be, then they could really make a run this year. So definitely excited to see what he does. One more, David, we didn't put him on the list here, but I'm going to make you talk about him. And it is Cam Smith is likely to make the Astros opening day roster. They have not officially announced it, but he would be playing outfield for them. So David, give me your
He kept saying players. I thought we were going to talk about Jackson Jobe. Jackson Jobe also made the Tigers.
Oh, okay. Well, he's been in the big league. He's not making his debut. He's been
Okay.
in the big leagues before. We expected him to be on the
But
roster.
he did make the Tigers as well.
He
Definite
did. Yes,
note there.
very good.
And we don't know about Cam Smith yet. It was reported by Jed. I can't remember his name.
I think it was reported by one of the Astros beat guys.
It was the former crap. I can't remember his name now. Bowden, Jim Bowden.
Jim Bowden. Okay.
It's not 100%. We did also record the Astros episode. It's not out yet, but I gave a lot of these thoughts in the Astros episode. Make sure you check that one out as well. Cam Smith is like 5 games in Double-A experience. He struck out 26% of the time here in spring, despite the home runs. I really think he's going to struggle in this, especially in this first year, if you're going to try to make him, kind of formulate into this right field fit that I don't think is there because he's been a third baseman since college. I do think there's some precedent that's been brought to my attention since we recorded the Astros episode, which is Wyatt Langford last year had a little bit similar experience. That said, I think Wyatt Langford's a better regarded prospect, and coupling that together, Wyatt Langford struggled right last year. He struggled pretty mightily early on. Took him a while to get going, and then once he got going, he looked like a future superstar. I do think Cam Smith's going to struggle early. I think the Astros fans have to temper their expectations, and I think the reason they're doing this is because the Astros they went and traded away Kyle Tucker, and then they didn't backfill him with another player. And now you're trying to start a guy who may or may not be able to compile both learning a new position and hitting at the major league level all at the same time. I'm not going to put it past Cam Smith. As I've said, like I'm rooting for the guy. The risk that he's a star was always part of the trade. That doesn't matter to me. But I don't think it's going to be the best thing for Cam Smith's development. But I'm just one guy, and it feels like a move that's being made out of desperation by the Astros, is to hoping to bottle up this Cam Smith, hyper run. Hopefully he's able to keep it going in the major leagues, and then the Astros are able to maintain the relevancy when you and I have both felt like their Astros are kind of on the beginning of the downward trend for a team that's been at the top of the AL West for the last several years.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. You're a lot more of an expert on Cam Smith than I am because he was the Cubs draft pick and was, obviously followed him in the minor leagues last year when he was playing, and definitely gonna be interesting. For the parts I've seen of him, he's looked really good, but obviously it's spring training, so you never know. Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much all we have tonight. We got opening day Thursday. Be excited. Well, except for I didn't mention this. The Rays don't play till Friday. I don't really know why they did that. They play Friday for the first game.
So
they
what?
They play the Rockies. It's in.
Well, that's why.
But it's in Tampa. So I don't know. I don't know why. I'm sure it has something to do with the stadium getting it changed over from whatever spring training stuff they needed for the Yankees to the Rays, probably. But they usually build in a rain day, so they don't already have like needing a double header for opening day, basically. And Tampa would be the place to use a rain day like that. But I guess they just decided that they needed the extra day. So definitely something to look out for there. But yeah, any final thoughts on opening day, David?
I'm excited. It's the start of a new season. It's cool. I wish it's one of those where it also feels weird to have had my team play some games already. Very odd in my internal feeling, but I do hope everybody whose team hasn't started playing already is excited. I am too. I'm looking forward to trying to get to a few of these other games that we mentioned. Be on the lookout for some of those guys. I'm hoping, let's see where, some of these guys that get called up, see how they do, right? Christian Campbell's going to be exciting. Even Cam Smith's going to be a must watch, regardless of whether or not we think he's going to be any good. We're going to be tuning into him. So, I'm excited. Thursday, opening day, season's there. We'll be back again next Monday, obviously, and keep looking out for our season previews. They should be wrapping up by about Thursday.
Yes, we did put up the Red Sox yesterday. Okay. The Orioles will be going up. I'm going to go ahead and put it up tonight. And then we should have 2 come up tomorrow, 2 come in on Wednesday. And then on Thursday morning, before the games start, we will be uploading our final season preview. So be on the lookout. Check those out.
They're all currently on YouTube. So
they're on YouTube. A few of I think I've been a little bit behind on putting them on the podcast platforms, so
if
I can
you
get
are
them up
looking
there
for them.
too. But if you're looking for them, YouTube is your best bet. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. Check us out on all our social medias, and we'll see you next week.